You step into the kitchen at a gathering, or maybe the break room at work, just trying to grab a quick cup of coffee in peace. You think you're safe. But then, an acquaintance walks in, traps you by the counter, and hits you with the ultimate soul-crushing question. So, keeping busy lately? Instantly, your energy flatlines. You don't want to explain your life. You don't want to talk about the weather. You just want your coffee. Society has a very specific diagnosis for this exact reaction. They call you socially awkward. They assume you are shy, avoidant, or lack basic interpersonal skills. They treat your hatred of small talk as a personality defect that you need to fix. But psychologists have recently realized that society has this completely backward. Your hatred of small talk isn't a lack of social skill. It is an intense biological craving for something else entirely. If you are someone who would rather sit in complete, unbroken silence than force a 5-minute conversation about traffic, welcome. You are about to feel very seen. Today, we are breaking down the hidden psychology of people who despise small talk. And to understand why you do this, we have to look at what is actually happening in your brain when someone asks you, "How was your weekend?" For decades, the assumption was that happy, well-adjusted people talked the most, and quiet people were just miserable. But in 2010, a team of psychologists at the University of Arizona, led by Dr. Matthias Mehl, decided to actually test this. They attached recording devices to people and tracked every conversation they had for days. Then, they analyzed the depth of those conversations and measured them against the participants' overall happiness. The results completely shattered the social rulebook. The researchers found that the happiest people in the study didn't just have more conversations. They had completely different kinds of conversations. The happiest individuals had 1/3 as much small talk and twice as many deep, substantive conversations as the unhappiest people. Science literally proved that trivial, surface-level chatter does not make human beings happier. Deep connection does. But why does small talk feel so specifically exhausting to you? It comes down to neurochemistry. Extroverts, and people who thrive in highly social, fast-paced environments, rely heavily on the dopamine pathway in the brain. Dopamine loves novelty. A fast, snappy exchange about a sports game or a trending TV show gives a dopamine-dominant brain a rapid, satisfying hit of energy. They don't need the conversation to mean anything. The friction of the chat is the reward. But if you are a deep thinker, an introvert, or someone who simply values substance, your brain relies on a completely different chemical pathway, the acetylcholine pathway. Acetylcholine is tied to deep thought, memory retrieval, internal reflection, and focused attention. When your brain is operating on this pathway, it is actively searching for meaning. It wants to dive deep. So, when someone traps you and says, "Crazy weather we're having, huh?" your brain hits a brick wall. Your acetylcholine pathway is desperately searching for something to process, something to analyze, something real. But there is nothing there. Small talk is the conversational equivalent of eating a handful of plain ice chips when you are starving for a heavy meal. It requires effort to chew, but it provides absolutely zero psychological nutrition. You don't hate small talk because you hate people. You hate it because it literally starves your nervous system. But if small talk is so biologically useless, why did humans invent it? In 1923, an anthropologist named Bronislaw Malinowski coined a term for small talk. He called it phatic communion. He observed that for the vast majority of human history, if you encountered a stranger from another tribe, it was a life or death situation. Humans needed a fast, low-stakes way to signal to each other, "I am not a threat." That is what small talk actually is. It is primate grooming behavior. When a coworker asks how your Tuesday is going, they do not actually care about your Tuesday. They are simply performing a biological ritual that says, "I acknowledge your presence and we are safe around each other." For most of society, this ritual feels comforting. But for you, it feels like a performance. And if you are over the age of 30, this feeling of performance has likely mutated from a minor annoyance into total, outright exhaustion. When you were in your 20s, you probably played the game. You forced the fake laughs and pretended to care about trivial drama because you thought that was just how the adult world worked. But something profound shifts in the human psyche as you get older. You begin to understand the brutal reality of time scarcity. You have experienced real loss, real burnout, and real heartbreak. Once you have survived the deep end of the ocean, splashing around in the shallow end feels completely absurd. Your tolerance for inauthenticity plummets. When you know how heavy life actually is, standing in a break room pretending to be deeply fascinated by someone's new golf clubs feels like a betrayal of your own time. You simply no longer have the energy to wear the mask. You want to talk about fears, ambitions, the strange nature of reality, or nothing at all. But right now, we need to hit the brakes. If we are going to talk about the psychology of small talk, we have to talk about the dark side. Because it is very easy to listen to this and tell yourself that you are just too deep for the modern world. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Small talk is the toll booth to deep conversation. You cannot walk up to a complete stranger, look them dead in the eyes, and ask them about their childhood trauma or their deepest existential fears. That is not deep. That is incredibly invasive. Human beings require a bridge to cross from strangers to confidants. Small talk is the bridge. It builds the baseline of trust required to eventually drop the armor. Are you avoiding small talk because you are protecting your energy? Or are you avoiding it because you lack the vulnerability and the patience required to actually build a connection from scratch? If you use your hatred of the script to isolate yourself, to look down on other people, or to justify why you have no close friends, you aren't operating from a place of depth. You are operating from a place of arrogance and fear. You are using the label of deep thinker as a shield to protect yourself from the messy, uncomfortable work of getting to know someone. But if you are in the healthy camp, if you genuinely love people but just despise the script, you possess a rare and incredibly valuable trait. You are a deep diver in a world of skimmers. Because you refuse to engage in the shallow, superficial games, the relationships you do build are unbreakable. You don't have 50 acquaintances that you casually text once a month. You have a few close friends who know the absolute darkest, most complex parts of your soul, and who would drop everything to help you in a crisis. When you sit down with someone, you don't offer them a performance. You offer them your absolute, undivided, authentic presence. And in a society where everyone is constantly distracted, performing, and hiding behind a polite script, your demand for authenticity is a breath of fresh air. So the next time you find yourself trapped by the coffee machine, trying to decide how to escape, don't feel guilty. You aren't broken. You aren't antisocial. You are just preserving your energy for the conversations that actually matter. Tell me in the comments, what is your absolute least favorite small talk question that people constantly ask you? Let's collectively agree to ban it. And if you want to understand why your brain actively rejects surface-level interactions, the video on your screen right now breaks down the psychology of the highly observant mind. It explains exactly why you notice things everyone else misses. Click it, and I'll see you there.